Wow, you all quieted it a lot quicker than I thought. You ready? Yeah. I can't believe we're going to begin on time. Welcome, everyone. I'm Shannon Bowen, CEO of NC Local, and this is the 5th time that I have the honor of welcoming you all to the annual NC News and Information Summit. As the co-host, now under the banner of NC Local and in partnership with the Open Government Coalition. And this is the largest summit yet. There are more than 300 of you attending today. Amazing. From all around the state, outside of the state even. And as those of you from the South know, we pride ourselves on tradition. And I am so proud to see that this summit has become a tradition for all of you and for people working in local news, supporting local news, and open government. Last year, a student journalist was attending for the first time, and I remember afterward he told me, "This feels like a family reunion." And that has really stuck with me as we've welcomed new family as well. If you've been to all 5 summits, please raise your hand. I know there are some of you here in the crowd, maybe a few. Okay, yes, thank y'all so much. We started in 2022 at Elon University when I was leading the NC Local News Workshop, and my co-founder, Brooks Fuller, where are you? Somewhere in the room I know, was leading the Open Government Coalition, and we said, let's try to bring people together. But there was a COVID spike that year. And we made it through, though. We had about 75 people in attendance, and it has grown every year since. And each year, we tackled different themes. The one year, it was making the case for supporting more newsrooms led by people of color. Another year was about building trust in elections. And last year, we heard from journalists from Western North Carolina who did a remarkable and essential job of keeping their communities informed during Hurricane Helene. And this year, as you'll hear in a moment, we're discussing the force of AI as the news sector faces yet another pivotal moment. And we have so many great sessions, and it was important to us from the beginning in launching the summit that this is really a peer-led event. There are not people talking at you. Every single session that you will attend today was pitched by somebody in this room and is led by them. And this is the first year that I have not personally been heavily involved in planning, so that means it's going to be the best. With that, I'd like to thank my colleagues from NC Local, De'Ara Towns, our program manager, and Catherine Komp, our ecosystem engagement director, who you all know because she is really famous in the state as the voice behind our ecosystem newsletter, The Hub. And before I turn this over to our partner, Peyton McMichael from the Open Government Coalition, we have some exciting news to share because we are all news nerds in this room. We think it's exciting, about the upcoming National Local News Day. We have been working alongside many newsrooms, both in our state and out of the state, to celebrate Local News Day, which is April 9th. It's kind of like an Earth Day for local news. This is a movement taking shape all around the country. And as we typically do here in North Carolina, we're really going big. We are hosting, along with other newsrooms, news cafes meant to bring communities together, to meet journalists in their communities. And we have also been seeking proclamations from governments all around the state. And we're really excited to share that the governor has issued a proclamation in support of local news in North Carolina. And I'm going to ask NC Local's editorial director, Laura Lee, to come up and read that proclamation.
Good morning. I love to get to proclaim this early. Whereas Americans overwhelmingly say local news is the most important and most trusted source of news, and whereas local journalism is a foundational element of a functioning and healthy democracy, and local journalism equips communities for civic engagement and action, and whereas states across the country are joining together to recognize and celebrate the importance of local news on April 9th, behind us, by the way, Whereas North Carolina communities rely on trusted local news for reliable, vetted information, both in daily living and moments of crisis. And whereas North Carolina is home to hundreds of news and information outlets, hundreds of news and information outlets, the state of North Carolina recognizes the critical importance of local news in many forms. Now, therefore, I, Josh Stein, Governor of the state of North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 9th, 2026 as Local News Day in North Carolina and commend its observance to all residents.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I'm Pate McMichael, and I would like to start out by saying I'm the director of the North Carolina Open Government Coalition. We're coming right on the heels of Sunshine Week, which was last week, and we're here to celebrate all things transparency, all things open government. We are a little tight on time this morning, so I'll come back and talk more about that, the Sunshine component of our conference today, when we do our Sunshine Awards at 10 o'clock. First of all, I would like to thank all of our sponsors that are here today. Without you, we would not be able to have the 5th Summit and a record-breaking attendance. So that is the most critical part, is helping us fund this great gathering of community and like-minded people. It means a lot, and thank you for your support. I want to run through some housekeeping stuff just so we get started on the right foot and that we give you the information you need to have a great summit. Before I do that, these are just a few pictures that Shannon and I were going to share about the previous summits. You can see Brooks and Shannon there in their masks during the pandemic. And in the bottom there, you can see our wonderful Hurricane Helene panel last year led by Dean Baquet of the New York Times. The summit has been a tradition in North Carolina now for 5 years, and we're hoping to get 5 more. So thank you all for being here and celebrating with us. Part of having a successful summit is that we all know our code of conduct and that we report things that might be happening that are untoward. So please look for me or look for Shannon or for Catherine if you have an issue related to the code of conduct. We take it seriously, just like we take all of your safety seriously. Throughout this building, you will see beige phones. There's one there, there's one in the back, and in every room you're in, there's a beige phone. If you have a security issue, if you have a health issue, if you have a technology issue, pick up that phone and it will ring to the front desk and they will help out. Let's hope none of those things are needed today, but if they are, go to the phone, all right, or find me. We also have free Wi-Fi for everyone. So if you're blowing up your data plan right now, there's no need to do that. If you've got one bar, get a few more. This is how you log in. If you are using a VPN and you're insisting on that, you'll need to go to the front desk and they'll help you connect another way. I want to give a big shout out to our program committee. Without these individuals who are out there right now helping people get registered, who helped us select who will be presenting, who helped us pick our keynote, who helped us organize this event, we wouldn't be able to have a summit because our staffs are not that big. So we rely on the generosity of our volunteers, and please know, if you're on this list, how much we appreciate your service. Before I get into the keynote and introduce Alex, I do want to say one more thing that's important. So we have a happy hour event after today's gathering at the Ben Bar, which is part of the Trophy Brewing franchise. I just wanted to say a word about parking there and getting there. It is a little bit of a dicey drive over, and it might be good to ride with someone and leave a car parked here and come back for it later if you're not used to driving in Raleigh or downtown Raleigh. I noticed when I went yesterday that there's a lot of street parking, but the parking lot that is associated with the Ben Bar is a paid lot. So if you park on the street, please be careful because there are cars whipping past, right? And so when you get out of your car, you're basically stepping out into that lane. So I just want you to be safe, and please be careful getting over to the bin bar. I really would like to thank the Assembly. They are paying the tab on that, and that is a gathering that is from 5 to 8 or even later this afternoon, weather cooperating. Most of the space there is outdoors, so the inside space is obviously not going to fit 300 people, but it's a huge outdoor space, a really fun spot, and there's, of course, food, and there's plenty of restaurants nearby. So I think that covers the housekeeping. Catherine, I'm sorry if I missed something, but trying to keep this on track. And with that, I would like to start an introduction and talk to you all about our keynote panel, which we're going to begin. Right now, North Carolina is at the center of the AI conversation in ways that are hard to ignore. Last September, the governor signed an executive order establishing the state's AI Leadership Council. The hope is to make North Carolinians AI literate across the state. With that, though, comes large data centers. And despite public resistance, they're going up at a pace that's reshaping our energy grid, our environment, our economy, our communities. The decisions being made right now in Raleigh and county commission chambers and newsrooms will shape how this technology unfolds for North Carolinians for decades to come. That's exactly why today's conversation matters, and why we're so fortunate to have Alex Mahadavan leading it. Alex. I'm going to introduce you a little bit. Alex is a faculty member at Poynter and director of MediaWise, Poynter's digital media literacy project that has reached more than 150 million people across 12 countries. He has spent his career at the intersection of journalism, truth, and technology, teaching media literacy to thousands of middle and high school students, training hundreds of international journalists in verification, digital investigative tools, and building programs that help everyone from college students to senior citizens navigate an increasingly complex information landscape. But perhaps most relevant today, Alex is one of the leading voices tracking how generative AI is reshaping and in some cases challenging the way news is produced and consumed. He co-authored Poynter's AI Ethics Guide, part of their ongoing initiative to help newsrooms adopt artificial intelligence responsibly while keeping their audiences and integrity intact. And with that, I am going to turn you over to Alex in his reliable hands, because today's keynote will take us through those opportunities and risks and answer some of the questions I know we're all wrestling with. There's no better person equipped to guide this conversation as an educator, a journalist, a researcher, and practitioner. So please join me in welcoming Alex Mahadavan.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Well, thank you, everybody. Who here is tired of hearing about AI? Too bad. Because that's what we're going to talk about for the next hour. But before I get into that, just an additional introduction on top of what Pate said. I am also the father to 2 dogs, 6 chickens, and a horse named Magic Mike. But let's go back a little bit. This is a quote from Nelson Poynter, the founder of the Poynter Institute. Now, Nelson was way ahead of his time. He put the St. Petersburg Times under the umbrella of Poynter so it didn't end up in the hands of a hedge fund or a big company. And he said this about technology. And I don't totally disagree with him, although I don't think he really grasped what tech overlords would do with this technology and how it would shape how we use it. Enter generative AI. The doomers, as well as the boomers, want you to think it's something like this. In my experience, as someone who's been using it for a very long time, it's a little bit more like this. It's absurd, complicated, kind of funny, but also can be very impactful, is very impactful, has been compared to the iPhone moment in our industry. The problem is, our audience, the people that we try to reach, this is what they think of when they think of AI. AI slop, shrimp Jesus. Or this, Data centers no longer confined to remote industrial parks, now popping up in people's backyards. Our information ecosystem went from the AI swagged out Pope posted by some rando on Instagram, which fooled millions of people, we sort of crossed the Rubicon here, to an administration that uses generative AI like a kid with a flamethrower, to the point where we literally have to fact check every single image and video that comes out of this administration like we have never had to before. It's changed the way people are coming to us. Thanks to Google AI overviews, it's getting harder for our audiences to fact check things that are coming out of the White House and come to the information that we have, or make heads or tails of Shrimp Jesus. Get that? But more seriously, like clockwork, every time a new CEO announces layoffs, they always seem to pair it with the fact that they're leaning into AI. They are making deals with AI companies, our archives, in exchange for quick cash and top billing and chatbots, or they are fighting back, like the New York Times, which is suing OpenAI for stealing its valuable IP. All the while, technology keeps advancing. This story about an AI agent that went rogue and defamed a poor developer in a totally autonomous blog post. Also a lesson in how journalists should not use AI, as the article was immediately retracted because the reporter sick with the flu used Claude to pull quotes that ended up being hallucinated. By the way, don't use the word hallucination. I'm sorry for that. Use the word error. The tech companies want to sort of whitewash how we talk about these technologies, and it's very important for us to be clear with our audience what they do, what they can't do. And in the midst of all of this, a column from the Plain Dealer. The editor said a recent grad turned down a job because of how they use AI. They use it to rewrite reporters' notes and write entire articles. The editor said it was a failure on the part of journalism schools and J-school professors. I think the student was taking an ethical stand, and there's a lot of nuance in that. But it triggered a wave of reaction, most of it negative. It was covered by everyone from CJR to the Washington Post. And it has sort of clouded the conversation around AI. And we've ended up focusing on something that AI does arguably the worst, which is writing. And so a very frustrated Slack message snowballed into an AP editor saying something about AI writing that got taken out of context by none other than Semaphore. We all love Semaphore. And so these straw men sort of emerged. AP editor says that AI writing is better than humans. These Luddites say they never want to use AI and are taking our industry back to the Stone Age. Both straw men, both incorrect, both black and white. So we are sort of losing the plot because we are focused on AI writing right now and really the bad use cases of AI, where we should be focusing on innovation. Like Chappie. Does anyone here know Chappie? No. So Chappie was an experiment here in North Carolina among a few different chatbots aimed at connecting news organizations with audiences that want to chat. They want to be heard. In Venezuela, journalists are using AI avatars so they can report without worrying about being arrested. In my hometown newspaper, the Tampa Bay Times, my wife's team uses an AI news engine to write real estate briefs so they can focus on the stories that matter, like hedge funds coming into our neighborhoods and buying up houses, jacking up prices, and kicking out renters. In Minnesota, the Star Tribune used AI to decode the manifesto of the Annunciation shooter. They did so by using ChatGPT to decode a cryptogram that was posted on YouTube in a series of notebook pages being flipped. And my friends at PolitiFact are always able to find the precedent for pants on fire among 26,000 fact checks. The most compelling AI uses are not the sexiest ones. They are the ones that help us get rid of doing the boring stuff so we can better connect with our audience. And as our data has shown, audiences already think we use AI for everything, from writing to images to charts and graphs to basically everything we do. The good news is that they are okay with it as long as we have good ethics policies and we are clear when we use AI. We disclose. But like with all things AI, it is a little complicated. And when they see we used AI, they might trust us less. So those are all the challenges that we are facing. One final provocation to think about when it comes back to those two straw men being built. I don't think, and I don't think anyone in this room could ever think, that AI can replace really good writing and really good reporting. But if Scripps is able to use AI to rewrite a well-reported and extremely hilarious news story for the website, then so what? So with all that in mind, I want to drill this down to what's happening here in North Carolina and welcome my wonderful panelists to the stage. If you want to come on up here, and I will have you introduce yourselves once we sit down. You will get that shrimp joke on the way home, I promise. Why don't we start from left to right here? You want to start by just very briefly introducing yourself and then pass it down the row.
My name is Lisa Sorg, and excuse me, I am the North Carolina reporter for Inside Climate News, and I've been a reporter in North Carolina, I guess now, going on 20 years.
Hi, my name is Ricky Lung. I use he, they pronouns. I'm the Strategic Initiatives Lead at Code the Dream. We are a tech nonprofit that offers free coding classes for communities underrepresented in tech, and we also produce civic tech. I do also have a background in journalism, went to UNC Journalism School, worked at National Geographic, the Smithsonian, and NC Policy Watch for a number of years before doing also a stint in voting rights and immigration rights in Asian American communities in North Carolina.
Good morning, everyone. Oh. Whoa. Good morning, everyone. Okay, much better. So I am not a journalist. I am an educator. I'm an associate professor of information systems at North Carolina Central University, and I'm also the founding director over our AI Institute called the Institute for Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Research, which is the first HBCU in the nation to have an AI institute, and we're very proud of that. My background, thank you, that deserves a clap. My background in research is in artificial intelligence and STEM, and I'm extremely excited to be here with you all this morning. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. And I think you are a journalist. I mean, you ask questions, you do, I think you practice journalism. So let's stick with you, though. So the first question I have, and this will go down the line for the whole group, what is one word that you would describe the moment we're in with AI here in North Carolina, and how does it intersect with the work that you do?
That's a great question. I do a word every year, and I'm going to start there. My word for last year was transformative, and that's really the space that we're in right now with AI. It's no different than when COVID-19 hit and we had to really change the way we do things. We're in this pivotal moment now where AI is not going to be rolled back. It's here to stay, and we have to decide how we're going to reintroduce the work that we do in society. And so I really appreciated your notes here that you shared at the keynote, because that's the moment we're in. We're in a stage where we're either going to get transformed or we may get left behind.
Thank you. How about you, Ricky?
I had a word preparing for this conversation, but then I changed it this morning. I think I'm going to go with the word human, actually. I think that this moment really leads us to think about what makes us human, what keeps us human, and moving forward, how do we your presentation said, how do we use AI in a way that kind of keeps us human and keeps us relevant? And yeah, I think that's what I would go with.
Great.
Well, I asked Claude this morning what the word should be. I did not ask Claude. I don't talk to Claude. I guess my word would be chaos. And the reason is, we're struggling to define what the guardrails are in the newsroom. I have my own personal guardrails, but then when I go out into the communities and see what these data centers are doing, which we'll get to later, to those neighborhoods, and I feel like I have to approach AI with a sense of intentionality, because I know what the back end looks like, the downstream harm. And I would say that's similar to hog farms or, other industries that harm communities. So I feel like I have to really bring a sense of calm to that and not get just on the bandwagon.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I do want to stay there on data centers. I think if you look back to 2 years ago, people were sort of on the fence about AI, but people were a little bit more hopeful. I don't think there was the negativity around it that you're seeing today. But I think it comes down to seeing something tangible, seeing something in your community. And you saw AOC and Bernie just filed legislation to ban data centers because they are popping up in people's backyards. They're now actually seeing the environmental impact. So I want you to talk about maybe the work you're doing, but specifically, what should the people in this room be paying attention to that they might not be when it comes to data center development in North Carolina?
Well, I think you should go to some of these places, like the Mabes in Stokes County, who are going to be living next to it and who are going to hear that 24/7, 365, or go to Edgecombe County in the black neighborhood of Kingsborough, where people are going to have to live next to it. Lee County, where there's a data center developer who wants to drill for natural gas next to the deep river to power the data center. So I think actually going to these places and being on the ground and saying this is going to transform this community, it's going to transform the environment, and what do we do about that? How do I, grapple with that?
So going to these physical spaces.
Yes.
It is important. So Justin Hendricks of Tech Policy Press, he went and looked at the XAI facility, the one that they were literally installing like gas generators on the top of it and blasting smoke into the air that nobody knew about. But he went there and he literally saw it. Elon Musk said, we are not doing this. But he used infrared cameras to say, hey, there is smoke coming off of here. So you bring up a really good point about sort of the importance of being on the scene. And I think, people who live around these things are sort of like, well, it's about time. I'm glad somebody is finally covering this. So I want to stay with the negative stuff, I guess, or thinking about the harms around AI before we get into opportunities and use cases. So Dr. Grady, I want to talk a little bit about bias in the machines. I didn't bring it up in the keynote because I had 10 minutes and tried to go through everything as quickly as possible. But these systems are trained on years and years of what I would say is a lot of unethical coverage. At Pointer, we've spent a lot of time trying to transform how we cover crime, to cover it in a more equitable way. So if I throw a cops report into ChatGPT and say, give me a cops brief on this, it's going to write it in a way that reporters used to write years ago that we've been trying to change. That's just one example. But like Dr. Grady, from a journalist perspective, how should we be thinking about the bias in these machines, and where does that come from, and then what advice do you have on sort of overcoming that?
I think that's a great question, and I really appreciated your keynote there, and I want to reframe something really quickly. They are systems, but who designed the system? People. So the human aspect is, I think humans need to take accountability for what we've done, okay? So these systems are trained on historical data, and we know historically everything has not been equitable for everyone. So the systems are just merely reflecting what we've put into them. Also, another aspect of this is it's just not reflective of the entire society, right? Everyone hasn't had access to technology to input data there. So when you have a system that everyone hasn't put data into, that is one or majority group of individuals, then it's just merely a reflection of that. How do we overcome that? And this is the truth. There will always be some type of bias in these systems because we all hold bias, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It's not a negative, but I think as a society it's something we can continue to strive for. And the great thing about AI and technology is that it evolves. It changes every day. just to give you all some context just really quickly, let's think back, and I'm fine with this, but I'm a millennial. I think back when I was in elementary school when the internet came about, right? That was a moment in time that changed probably journalism in a way. And I think about that because when I was in school, my teachers said no online reports or book reports. They wanted you to specifically go to a library. And let's look at this moment now. What if we didn't have this Wi-Fi to connect today? It's a game changer. So I think what we can do to be better is try to use these systems. Please don't put your personal identifiable information in them, please. No social security numbers, no bank information. And try to our best to help some of the bias, the historical, and just be better humans. The systems are reflecting humanity. And so we all need to do our part to make them better.
Well, I appreciate that. I want you to expand on one thing in particular before we move on. So I think Poynter and the University of Minnesota did this huge study last year on attitudes around AI. And the researcher we worked with was sort of blown away when he looked at the data on how many people and who is actually using these tools. Because I think we get sort of caught in this echo chamber where it's like, well, I use them, so I guess everyone's using them. Or you read about them all the time. Every time you search for something in Google, you get hit with an AI overview. But what you're saying is it's been inequitable, and not as many people are using these as maybe I think, or someone like in my bubble thinks. So how can we sort of expand our view on that?
Well, the reason why I'm saying that, has anyone heard of the digital divide? It's still here. People still don't have access to broadband. Some people still don't have access to actually technology devices. So everyone in this room is at a point of privilege. So how do we go back and start there? How do we go and reinvest in the communities to make sure that folks have broadband access of where they can access the internet, or that the actual tools like we all have today are accessible and affordable for them? So I think society, again, those in power, there's still work to do to get everyone up to speed.
So let's do sort of a negative flip to a positive that I hope. So I have been thinking a lot about cognitive autonomy. And I was at our AI summit last year, and a guy who uses it all the time, he was trying to articulate something. He's like, brain don't work so good no more. And I mean, he was kind of joking, but I want you, Ricky, to talk about sort of how do we hang on to our critical thinking skills while at the same time learning to use these tools in a responsible way to become better humans, like you mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that question. And I think we've been thinking about that a lot at Code the Dream because we run a coding school, and because our industry is also being upended by AI. Everybody with Cloud Code and vibe coding, all that kind of stuff. And so when that moment came, our first instinct is to tell our students not to use it, but our classes are asynchronous and remote, so there's no way to monitor usage. Folks are going to use it. It's just like the internet or any other tools that came along. We either teach them how to use it responsibly, or we ignore the fact that they're using it and go down like a not great path. So the way that we've been thinking about it, and it's still evolving, right? We don't have a set policy. The technology is also evolving, is to really think about how to teach our students how to think, how to engage, and understanding the why behind it all, rather than just kind of consuming what it tells you, right? I think it really kind of thinking about having conversations with a mentor. Like, I'm not going to ask my mentor to do my work for me. I'm going to talk to my mentor to kind of learn more about how I think, how I process information. Every student is also different. I think this is also an opportunity for folks to interact with AI in a way that explores how they learn independently. And I think that's the best way to do it. I also think about one of my favorite classes from high school is a class about knowledge, about how we know what we know, and really think about how do we come to the answers. So I think really leaning into that intellectual curiosity and nurturing it.
So you bring up learning and sort of learning how to learn. I've had to kind of teach myself how to learn how to use these tools, if that makes any sense. I'm going to throw you a curveball, actually, Ricky, because this just popped into my head. So I was talking to a professor who helped design Anthropic's AI fluency course. Great guy, but he said that in a few years now, there will be no need for teachers because every student will have their own personal AI assistant that will gather knowledge and help them learn in the very specific way that they need to learn. There is a school that is opening or either has opened in Chicago that allegedly doesn't have teachers. It has guides, I think they're calling them. So is this going to happen, Ricky? And is it a good or bad thing?
I think it's entirely possible that happens, and I'm not sure that there is an answer of whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's like in many ways that AI is impacting all industries, is transforming it, and roles are going to change. Is it good or is it bad? It depends on how we make of it as users and consumers of that technology, I think. I don't know if that's a good
No,
answer.
it is a good answer. And I'm going to continue just pestering you here because I just, in North Carolina, not on that question, but maybe on the first question, in North Carolina, are there certain education initiatives? Are there certain things that you're trying to watch here in this state that will help upskill young people without having them lose their critical thinking? Like, I know you do work in this space, but are there policies that journalists and academics in this room should be watching locally here?
I'll be perfectly transparent. That's a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Gotcha.
But I would say that, like, in terms of like how I would tell people to engage with AI, particularly like things like Claude, is like one specific thing I do is I go into the settings and I tell it to, like, anytime I ask you a question, like, ask me clarifying questions. Don't help me come up with an answer. Don't give me the answer. Citations and all that kind of stuff. So I think just like, again, like kind of really leaning into learning more about how I learn rather than getting the answer.
Thank you for that. So I kept tossing around the phrase responsible use in my keynote. And people talk a lot about responsible use, which is sort of a squishy phrase. In the same way that when we talk about AI disclosures, we say, if you used AI in a substantial way, you need to disclose. What does substantial mean? It's in the eye of the beholder. But I want to talk, and I'll ask each of you on the idea of responsible use. And if you can think of a local example here, what does that mean to you in thinking about some of the challenges that we have discussed?
Should I start?
Yes.
Okay. I think people are caught in between using responsible or ethical. I think ethical is scaring people because we know ethics is really kind of big and it touches on so many things. And let's be honest, people are unethical outside of AI. And thinking about the use of it is probably very, very much in the same realm. But when we think about responsible, what that means to me is someone who, and I appreciate what you said here, but someone who has guardrails. They take accountability on the ways in which they use the technology to assist them and have basically a moral or ethical compass. So they're not cheating. Perhaps they're using it to assist them or enhance something that they've already done. I think that's the way that I'm viewing responsible, and also not putting their social security number in these systems. Responsible.
Privacy, and another thing that I did not bring up, and if anyone here is using OpenClaw or Claude Code Dispatch on your phone and coding from your phone, don't do that. Don't. Ricky, you've talked quite a bit about this already, but is there anything to add when you think about what responsible use is?
I think, for me, I think even from my journalism background, the biggest value that I hold is transparency, really, and then that kind of folds into that, like kind of learning how to learn, right? I think also for our audiences, when news consumers, I think for folks to really learn how to consume the news, it's really like showing them like how we come up with how we come to the information, so that they also understand where this information comes from and how to better consume the news and information in general. And again, like kind of like even in like our reporting or in our work, like showing people like how we learn, and so in doing that, like teaching them how to learn and come to conclusions themselves.
And so, Lisa, you did not ask Claude this morning for assistance. There are a lot of people that do that. It is literally changing the way that we talk and write. So, again, think carefully before you use it for creative writing. But in terms of like responsible use, especially from your perspective, as you're covering the impact on the environment and our infrastructure, what is your view on responsible use?
Well, I can see that it would be responsible to use AI, for example, to analyze visual imagery, aerial imagery, to find chicken farms, since those are all secret in North Carolina, their locations. So I could see that as a trade-off that would be worth it. I do want to say, and this is kind of a 30,000-foot view of kind of the philosophy of journalism, but I'll give you an example. Chemours, many of you know who Chemours is, just a federal judge had ordered them to unseal documents related to a court case, and those documents, 20,000 pages, were unsealed this week. I paid Pacer, which is a ripoff, but I wanted the freaking documents, and I am turning every page. I am not using AI, and I am doing that intentionally because there could be things that AI would miss. And I just want to say the work we do here is super hard, but it's also the joy of it, the joy of discovery, the joy of the struggle even, the joy. When I'm done with this, I'm going to say, I went through 27,000 pages of court documents. I'm going to have a beer. And so sometimes I think shortcuts aren't always the best way. I think there's a certain discipline, a certain embracing of the joy and sorrow of this craft that AI robs us of, and don't be afraid of it. So that's my soapbox. I really am on a soapbox up here, I guess.
Well, maybe there's a way to balance that where, you sort of have targeted deep dives. You bring up a good point, because a lot of people talk about the ability of AI to cover meetings and cover very long budget meetings. And I was just telling someone last night that I used to take great pride in sitting through a 10-hour budget hearing. In fact, before I met my wife, I once caught her, she worked for the opposing newspaper, doodling during one of these. And I just remember thinking, how dare you? How dare you disrespect these commission chambers? And so I agree with you to a certain extent, and maybe this is something where you in your early career, you are maybe using these tools in a different way than someone deeper into their career. Dr. Grady, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I love that. And I think what you're speaking to is the passion that so many of us have with the things that we love and do. Yeah, AI should not augment that at all. I think we should, number one, this is how we got to where we are, right? That passion and that tenacity, that's what got us where we are. I really just view it as a tool. And I had an AI summit on campus yesterday, and I just want to say this, because we started here, the human. I think we're forgetting that we need to drop this thing sometimes and go walk outside. I want to go dip my toes in the sand this summer, go to the beach, and if nothing else, my hope is that in all the busyness of life, perhaps these tools can buy us time back instead of giving us more work to do.
Exactly. Fold our laundry instead of doing our art for us, right? And I mean, to be quite honest, in watching the evolution of something like Claude Code and agentic coding, I do sometimes feel a little bit like it is doing my laundry. But with that positive remark, I will go back to the negative. We have not discussed, I brought up a little bit of the mis and disinformation problem with these tools. The reason I started using ChatGPT right after it came out was I was creating a bunch of fake newspapers so I could show students, hey, here's how easy it is to create a pink slime news site now. Like in 30 minutes, you can stand up a bunch of these. So it's always been sort of in the back of my mind. We're having to use like OSINT techniques that we would use to on like viral Facebook posts on like what the administration is putting out. So I want to ask you, Lisa, as someone who is in the field and reporting, how is the rise of AI-generated content making your job harder?
Well, I have to take a beat to consider whether what I'm reading and seeing is true. And that actually takes time itself. So AI trying to save me time actually costs me time because now I have to make sure that AI, it's a meta thing. It's like, chasing its tail. I would say, I talk to myself quite a bit. And when I was watching something on Twitter the other day and I started laughing and I thought, well, that's funny if it's true. And I say that all the time now. Well, that would be really interesting if it's true. And so it does make my job more difficult because I have to go back and fact check what's being presented to me on even a different level than I would normally. So I think it actually, in some cases, costs me time. It doesn't, not only does it not fold my laundry, it makes my laundry dirty. And then I have to wash it, and then I have to ask it to fold it. I'm really the Luddite up here. I didn't pivot to video either.
Yeah, and it's important to remember the Luddites were not anti-technology, they were pro-labor, so that's an important distinction. Well, you make a really good point, and also that might be the quote of the day. It's also doing something that researchers have called the liar's dividend, where now we can't really believe anything we see, and bad actors can now say, oh, I never said or did that, that's just AI. What would have happened if the Access Hollywood tape dropped now? It would have been a lot easier to talk his way out of that one. So in staying on that, have either of you gotten fooled by any like AI doorbell footage of flamingos or anything like that?
Not to that extent, but I was using Claude actually yesterday to help me compile a report. And I gave it, all my documents, and there was, we did like 9 interviews, user interviews for a project, and I asked it to kind of like look through my notes and just compile a summary for me, and ended up telling me that I did 10 interviews. And I was like, where did that one other person come from? And I totally missed it until I had a colleague of mine like kind of like double check my work. And so that's also something that like, for me, it's been both like kind of an opportunity, right, to talk to my colleagues more, to double check my work. So I'm not just questioning what's real myself, but I'm also conferring with my friends and colleagues who's like, what do you make of this? So it's actually fostering more conversations for me as well.
I like that, so connecting with your colleagues. And you bring up the importance of using tools that will lead you to, that have citations that lead you to things. So like I use Notebook LM to organize because I know I'm going to get a citation that leads me to where something was said in a transcript. Whereas in something like Claude, if I'm just kind of playing around in there, it very well will hallucinate, create errors on things that were actually not said. Dr. Grady.
As far as the technology, no, I haven't been fooled. I'm very strategic in the way that I use these tools. I use it for very specific things. And, one thing that I think that is, so with bias, what's happening with AI is everything is just scaled now at a much higher level. And you said something in your talk, really liked your talk, you can tell, but just how you were mentioning the White House. And I think what we're seeing now is a shift in accountability, right? I don't even know if it's the systems that are making your laundry dirty. I go back to the people. I think what we're seeing is a lot more bad actors being able to be bad. And it's taking more time to figure out, like you said, what's real, who's authentic, and who's not. And I think that's a deeper societal issue. But when we have leaders, not taking accountability, that's setting the wrong standard, perhaps. So I think those guardrails and having some type of governance framework is going to be necessary so that we can discern, the bad actors from good. But it's probably going to be too difficult to trace those generative AI images and all of that. We need some type of governance there, or some type of standard where there's a seal or something we can see to know if it's a real image or not.
Yeah. So what does that look like? Like when you think of governance and you think of ethics policies that we are talking about quite a bit, what are the most important boundaries that we should be drawing in our newsrooms?
That's a great question. So many different things, and this is why you need so many different people at the table. And we're struggling with this in the academic setting as well. A lot of people are talking about policy, but it takes so long to get a policy approved that, I think the best approach is those frameworks, because I think what you mentioned earlier at the table, actually, what we know right now in this moment, tomorrow is maybe obsolete. So we really need to put some structure and guardrails around transparency, how technology can and should be used, and perhaps ways in which are unethical or standards. But I think it's going to take all the voices, in those rooms to decide what is something that this newsroom can stand by, and this is how we do things. And then perhaps from there, it can be shared. And that's the other piece I'm hoping the AI can do, help us be more collaborative so we can all share and have similar governance frameworks and not have these different silos about how each one of us is approaching it.
But how do we, so the question that I always come back to is, can you imagine like if a newsroom had the means and immorality to launch an AI-generated video social media platform like Sora, immediately start stealing IP from Disney, get them to invest $1 billion into it, and then just pull the plug and say, you know what, actually, we're not going to do that. Like, how do we, if we are up against these companies that have no ethics, ethical guidelines, guardrails, policies, like, how do we survive?
I think we all know the answer to that question. We have to take action with the powers that be. Have to make sure, number one, that we vote, and we vote for people who have those same ideals and standards, so that there can, be governance around those big billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies. It's not something, we can do individually. We have to come together to make that happen. So I think that's one approach that we can do.
Yeah, and you brought up watermarking. C2PA, Google has its synth ID. It's limited, but it is something that we could all be pushing for, is pushing and demanding of these companies that they just simply watermark the things that are coming out of it. Now, bad actors can get around that, but
there's always a way. Right.
Yeah. So let's have sort of our closing round here. So this is actually your opportunity to rattle off and speak as long as you want, by the way. This panel, this is like the most concise panel that I think I've ever sat on in my entire life. So can you give them a round of applause? I have not had to stop anyone. And so I do want to close. So everyone here is going back to a newsroom. They might be going back to a classroom, a courtroom, a community organization. And especially with like your experience and what you're working on right now, and we can start down there with Lisa, what is one thing that you want them to start doing differently, and why?
I would say ask your newsroom to give you a list of how AI is being used, so you know. I mean, you need to know that just for its own transparency's sake. And then really sit with yourself and say, I know the environmental impacts, I know the energy impacts, I know the benefits, and what are my personal ethics about this, and how does that match with the ethics in my newsroom? And I think every newsroom needs an ethics policy on this. And then, yours should be more lenient, but it could always be more strict. So I think that's, you really are going to have to dig deep into what you believe in, and act accordingly.
Yeah, at Pointer, we say start with your values, and everything you do with AI, your guidelines should be downstream from those values. How you're using AI matching up with the values of yourself and of your newsroom? And you can find Pointer's guidelines at pointer.org. They are very long, but you can sort of take bits and pieces. But it is very important. I couldn't agree with that more. Ricky, one thing the people in this room should start doing differently when it comes to AI next week.
I don't know if this is different from what you're already doing, but I think, even the conversation about having a policy around AI means like you already made a decision to use AI. So I would kind of like going big picture and think about why are you trying to use AI and what are the outcomes that you're expecting out of it? Is it the appropriate technology? Because there are other technologies too, like machine learning, deterministic stuff is still very useful. One example, like, is it really expanding the depth and breadth of the work that you're doing? So like one technology that we produce that might be helpful in your work is we have a legislative tracker. We use an AI to do transcripts of committee meetings, sends out alerts and stuff like that. So that could help with monitoring things because things happen so fast. So that's one use case. So it'll be might be great for an outcome, but looking into the why of what you're doing.
Exactly. Don't just go looking. Don't just take AI and go looking for a reason to use it. And there'll be a great session this afternoon on AI strategy in the newsroom that will address this. Find the problem. There has to be a problem that you are solving, not just throwing AI at everything. Dr. Grady.
I love everything that the panelists mentioned. I definitely feel reflection, like be reflective. But also as a technologist, I just want to say this. A lot of times we're not even using a fourth of what the technology can really do for us. So I would say continue to interrogate these systems, figure out the ways in which it can help you. And I really do mean that. People are just scratching the surface. It can do so much more than figuring out what you got in your fridge and giving you a recipe. These systems are, and I'm serious, that's something that some people, that's all they do. It can do so much more than that. So I would say be reflective, really refine your approach to how these tools are gonna help you in your newsrooms. Have some type, and you all might already be doing this, but have some type of transparency policy or something that you can share on your news outlet. And this is a time of innovation. This is a time to determine how you're gonna lead in this AI era. When I think about journalism and the different mediums, things have changed. From newspapers to now we're reading information online to now some folks are even using TikTok to do things. Use this moment to make sure you're at the forefront. That's it.
Thank you. So are we all still tired of hearing about AI? No? Yes? Maybe?
He told you he didn't care.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for your attention to this session. I think this is incredibly important worldwide, but particularly here in North Carolina. Get out, look at those data centers.